So we're here with Carlos and Ash, obviously the designers of this beautiful Z project that we're going through. And this whole episode is just going to be about the design process, working with these talented guys, and how we took this very jumbled group of kind of ideas and like it was more so you guys just pushing me to like go the way we're trying to go, but we'll
and then Project Save the Whole, we'll get there.
Yeah, so we're just gonna do an overview of how the project started, your guys work through how you guys start a project. We kind of did Photoshop stuff at first, stuff like that, and walk through it all. So what is your guys' first takeaway, or like when you're starting something fresh for somebody?
Well, we had talked originally about doing a 240, right? So that's a car that I love, as you know, and I know you guys love it as well. And that's kind of how we found one another, because we saw what you guys were doing with your past build, and Carlos and I both really were totally in love with the build. So, but knowing that you wanted to do another 240, but then elevate it, was super appealing to us, and considering all the different dynamic engineering aspects of it, and something it's knowing that it's going to be a one of a kind, first of the world kind of thing, we thought this would be a perfect idea to kind of combine and merge forces and stuff too. So, and I have a personal affinity for the car because I grew up with one, so very, very familiar with some of my first my first memories of being in a car as a 240Z. So yeah, I think I could even look over the door line as a kid in the car. So, but yeah, it's a fantastic car. So that's me. I'm curious also about you, Carlos.
Yeah, well, it's just an interesting process. And I mean, I knew the car already, but it's true when it hit me up really hard when I saw it was Larry Chen doing some review of the car. And that clicked me immediately. I fell in love. I think it was Ash. He shared with me some video about the review on Larry Chen with the Batido and Industrial Garage, and it blew my mind. I think, in terms of specs, to me, it's more like the aesthetic, and that hit me like, oh, but this guy, they know what to do. It's not just jumbo big wheel. They have some soul on it. And when you guys reach out, I was like, all right, these guys, for sure, I'm down. And so we were like, immediately connected. Yeah, for sure. That was my connection with the car. It's just funny enough, it was with you guys. So yeah, can be better.
Can tell we all just love cars, and we have an affinity for the 240Z, which is always a good place to start.
Yeah, absolutely.
Especially when this guy has like 5 or 6 Z's in one shot at one time.
Hey, do what you love.
He's got good taste and a problem.
A Z manic.
Maybe. Yeah, maybe. So we got the base idea done. Like we were like, okay, we're gonna do a Z. We want it kind of more modernized. Like I was initially pushing for like flares and stuff like that, but you guys had the idea of molded in everything and kind of more like a Singer style, just like really elevated and not the biggest craziest flares on the street.
We wanted to evolve what you had done already, and if I think that Carlos and I felt that if we had just done fender flares, which is always welcome, and it's period correct for the car, of course, but we thought that if we're really going to push ourselves, then we should try to think about a way to have the Singer approach, the Singer Porsche approach, which is taking what already exists and then expanding upon it. I think we've gone above and beyond and quite far away from what Singer would be comfortable doing with any of their cars. But given the fact that it was electric as well, allowed for us to really rethink about how wind goes through the car and how wide it can be, and where once an engine was, now other things can be, and where these design lines can kind of go and find their flow through it. So I think for Carlos and I, we were really trying to find a way to take the essence of the 240Z, which is, in my mind, is a perfectly ratioed car, and take that and evolve it in a way that is going to excite purists and excite enthusiasts, and also excite people that like to modify these cars all at the same time, which is a really difficult thing to do because it all comes down to taste. But in our opinion, good design taste always wins because it's just there's a form and a flow to things, and everything has a good mathematical ratio of things, and one thing complements the next that complements the next, and that's just good design.
Your design definitely made me want a 240 now. I was like, when I seen it, like, damn, this thing is like actually.
You know one before then?
Nah, I was like, yeah, it's pretty cool, but now it's just like, yo, this thing's modernized.
Yeah.
You know, reminds me of something off of Cyberpunk, so I was like, yeah, I need one now.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's exactly the reaction I think Carlos and I were hoping for, was to give. We're in this new era. This car is quite old now from the base when it was created, so the intent and the design of it is very old. So we really wanted to find a way to take that old essence, the silhouette of the car, and then kind of honor it, but then exemplify it and add more to it. So, we look at it and go, I really want that car now because it has a modern aesthetic. We also looked a lot towards Aston Martin, right, Carlos? Like we looked a lot at the beautiful lines and style that company does. I feel like they're some of the best in the game next to Porsche in regards to just aesthetics and ratios and having all the designs working really well.
Yeah, and they run a lot of the same like long hood, short chassis, like same ratios in a lot of their cars too, so it flows really well.
Yeah, exactly. They're big front engine, rear wheel drive. Some of them, it's sometimes nice combination, but it's the shut lines and cut lines and stuff too. I know Carlos and I both really admire them.
Yeah, actually, it's funny. It's funny approach where we knew about this collaboration. We started to think about it, me and Ash, and we have an interesting approach where independently we gather different reference about what we like, how we visualize the car, and then we meet up again in one call, and we compare what I pick, what he picked, and we were so aligned in our vision, and we knew instantly, all right, we got it. We are so close, and our taste is really similar. What we think is going to be good for the car, which was like all right, we have all of a massive win here already. It's not going to be any difficult approach. It was kind of anger, and then as you know, guys, you guys are similar things as well, so it was pretty much straightforward. And,
it's already hard to do these things. There's already enough friction points, so it's best to eliminate them as much as possible in regards to the creative process. So, and I think it's kind of odd to have two designers in my mind. It's an odd thing. Usually you just want one designer because you get that one voice, but I think because Carlos and I have been working together for such a long time, we have so much admiration, respect for one another, and love that we have a really good truth. Like we speak truth to one another very quickly. And I think personally that the design was so much stronger because we were able to help one another through each touch point, and just communicate through each spot and get inspired by one another's ideas. And we would just pass the design back and forth until it really came to fruition, and suggesting other options and stuff. And some of the key features of the design, I'm sure we'll get into, were discovered over one of us would go to sleep, the other one would pass a file, and one would draw, and then one would pass it back and forth. And when we go, wow, this is really it, and that's a process I think sometimes is really hard. When you're a designer, you lose objectivity because you're so connected to something. If something took you long to do, you have an affinity or connection to it, and that's really difficult to let go. But having two designers, I think, that have this kind of this bond, I think it actually makes it better. Magically, here's where all these thousands of decisions and things have evolved and become to fruition. You can see a lot of what we try to do is maintain the silhouette of the car. So if we look at the side of the car, is really key for us to maintain that signature, that sweeping line. We didn't really adjust it too much outside of adding the spoiler, extending the rear for the light. And then I think we raised up the front fender. Remember, Carlos, we raised that up quite a bit just because I know that we were lowering the center of gravity and lowering the car so much, and then eating up a lot of room and real estate inside the body itself with the size of the wheels themselves too. So, but we really wanted something that would stand out and be unique, and we knew that there was a lot of key features that would do that. And mainly, we'll get into it, I'm sure, but
Project Save the Hole.
Yeah, Project Save the Hole, exactly. So
He's just very persistent on it. I love seeing that whole conversation. You're like, yeah, we can go without it, but how about we just try to save it? Like, casually. And
I'm like sweating trying to find a workaround to figure out how we can do that, but we got it done.
yeah. Yeah, well, I know that. Well, Carlos, and so also another thing that I think that's really good is that Carlos and I are removed from the building process, so we can do things that you might be afraid of doing or not want to do because of the amount of labor and work and just the frustrating engineering side. And there's been many times where Carlos and I are like, "Oh, damn, Tim's really gonna hate us. You know, like, he's gonna hate us for doing this, but we can't help it. You know." So, and we got. I mean, we're really. I think this is the thing that really drew us to you guys is that when we watched the video that Larry Chen had done of you guys, Tim, you were so innovative and outside of the box. And so I think Carlos and I felt and saw that we believe that you could even go beyond yourself, you know? And I think that there was definitely moments where you're like, dang it, I don't know how I'm going to do this, or I'm not sure if I can. But I think that's what is the difference between a good builder and a great builder is being able to go into the unknown.
Yeah.
And, you know, I say as you're still building it. So, you know, we haven't seen the final results. So
That's true.
That's the fun.
Yeah, exactly.
the pressure's on slightly, so it's okay. Yeah.
Slightly, yes.
But yeah, I mean, there's so many things to talk about. And I think that one of the key approaches that Carlos and I like to have is we always start with references of other things that exist that we are inspired by. It can be cars, it could be architecture, or whatever, and we kind of combine those and fuse those together. And all of those things, I'd say, Carlos, what do you think? I feel like they're all in the final design here.
I think pretty much. I think we took at everything from the long conversation we had, also with the team, just basically taking all the beautiful features for different manufacturer and blending the interesting way where it fit with the theme of the car. And yeah, man, pretty much.
You see a lot of the
Trying to
inspiration from
make it
Aston
clean.
Martin. Sorry to cut you off.
Oh no! What did you
In
just
the
say?
rear. Like, I remember, I guess, was it a Vulcan, or what was the car they were showing? I forget the name. I know it started with the V.
Yeah, they all start with V's.
Yeah,
Oh.
they do.
Well,
I think it's a Vanquish.
I think, yeah, the Valkyrie. I see a lot of
Valkyrie.
inspiration.
Oh
in
yeah, the
rear.
Valkyrie as well. Yeah, yeah. I think you know, like we mentioned earlier, like great design. It all comes from ratios and finding clean ways of adding in details and stuff. And these are things that, like, I know it was really difficult for Carlos to include inside the poly modeling, because doing this kind of stuff on very clean surfaces is really difficult. But it was another feature that we knew that if we didn't have, and I'm talking about the vents on top of the fender, also the vortex generators, I guess you would call them, towards the rear of the rear side skirt, and then the rear as well, being able to see through it. I think one thing we talked about early on that we really wanted to do was create holes through the car, basically, because it is unorthodox what it is. The powertrain is so different. So finding negative space between things that once existed now is not there. And these are all like really fun experiences and really good things, and like really celebrating the fact that this is a unique build that is a one of a kind. And it will be a very special build in the legacy of 240Zs and how different it is. And hopefully it'll set its own trend, you know, become its own kind of thing, which is another potential byproduct of making something good. It'll become its own entity, you know.
We have to get a big sticker that says, "We did it first."
Yeah, exactly. Well, it'll be date stamped on YouTube and all these other things that we eventually post up too. Awesome. So the whole. So we knew pretty instantly that because this was going to be an EV, in my mind, I already know these cars somewhat decently because I've worked on them. I know that L series sticks up pretty close, and then there's a radiator and all these various things up in the front. But when you remove all that, I thought, well, why don't we just make a hole that goes through it? Because that would ultimately, I'm thinking, you know, I think it's about like capturing the person that sees it for the first time on at SEMA. You know, like they're completely consumed and overwhelmed by all the crazy stuff that they're seeing. But if they walk around and then they see this, they're ultimately going to know that something's different. Whether you put a K series engine in it that's all against the firewall that so you could do this, or there's something different with this engine. And so that was something. And I proposed the idea to Carlos. Carlos loved it. And then that whole kind of turned into a bunch of other things, which is we both love the gurney flap, I guess if you call that, this inclination. I had an NSX, and that's one of my favorite things on the Type R hood that I had, is that had this little bevel on the outside. So we wanted to include that.
Yeah. I think it's something worth to mention, as to me, I think it's fun to me because we work in collaboration. I have to give you the credit on the whole, man, because I think when we talk about constraints, it's very important having that constraint in your mind while you are designing. So because you have way more knowledge than me about engine and all these factors, we determine what is design. You came out with this idea about the whole, and I fell in love immediately. Like, wow, fuck yeah, man, that's fucking brilliant. You know, it's an amazing opportunity to feature this kind of design approach, and I love it. It makes totally sense. I know Timmy will hate us about it. It's a way more complicated approach to make it for real. But
yeah,
we understand.
Well, we fixed the issue that we had. The main issue was that the batteries were going to be in the way of the hole, where it would just be very shallow, which wouldn't be nearly as dynamic as the design you guys had. But we found a good workaround where we chopped what we had already built for the batteries and added a bunch to it, actually, right here. But yeah, so I mean, I had to think about it for 24 hours and try to figure out what to do, but I scattered and got it done, so no problem here.
Well, and that's probably our fault too, because we didn't start the design process until a little bit later, and Carlos and I get busy. We have all kinds of distractions going on, but when we did come in, and I felt bad, but at the same time, this is one of the things that both Carlos and I admire and love about your approach, is that you're willing to be working for it, and not just because we are asking of it, but because the car is better for it.
Yeah.
Because this is a statement piece, and if you're gonna put all this time to do something awesome, you might as well go all the way in. And that's something that we really do admire and respect and love about doing this collaboration with you guys, because you guys are willing to take the risk to go the extra distance, because that's how we like to work, so, and that's really rare. I think it's really rare to find people that are like that. So, but yeah, that's kind of I think that once we understood that design element, so if we go back to some of the sketches, I think, which one was it? We did a bunch of different versions of the front, but once we decided on, I think this was kind of closer, but this is like the rough sketch. But once we understood that, okay, the front's going to have this big hole through it, this beautiful negative space, and where else can we put it? So we knew we could put it behind the front wheel, and then in front of the rear wheel, and then in the rear of the car as well. So we created all these cavities through the car, and that would ultimately be the design kind of choices, basically, which was really fun. And I know that I think it set the whole car off, which really helped us kind of divide and conquer on, the rest of the design choices. When you design anything, you have to think you have to create a rule system, in a sense. If you have it here, you should maybe put it here, and what ratio does that? And everything has a flow to it. This curvature has this line, there's everything has a reason to it. This is an opposite to that angle, and that one goes to this one, and you have to look at it dimensionally, so we always start with 2D because it's faster for us to do, but once we go to 3D, it's a lot more particular, because every angle has to capture the light just right. And Carlos and I talked at great length about making sure all of the lines felt perfect, and all different types of light. And we did a bunch of light tests as well, if you remember that too. That was fun, testing how the light scatters over the car, where the light pools, where it captures, even this door detail here. Oh, let's do headlights. You want to do headlights? Carlos, you want to talk about the headlights?
That was interesting approach, because I was at the beginning I was hesitant about the headlights, because as we know, the 240 has a massive presence with the classic headlights. And where we start to talk about what about continue the headlights, because some models, they have kind of a glass transparent plastic where it follows the design. And that was the starting conversation. What about that? Could be an option. And we were back and forth, and we tried first in the sketching, and it worked. It was like it looks fucking cool with this kind of a blinder. And I think me and Ash, we are in the similar approach where we get into that a feeling of we like where the car looks simpler in a way to get that flows of the car. Everything about this car is kind of a interesting lines where they cross each other. So what about continue and make it more visible? And then obviously because the car increased the size and way more wider, so we have an opportunity to even show where the lines disappear and vanish and appear again, following as it is, as it was designed in the first place. And all the new opportunity about design appear in everywhere. You can see there just have kind of a 3 different axes mixing and disappear, which is really nice and nice flow. And it was like no brainer. We have to go with this. Maybe we can figure out later about how actually the headlight works.
Yeah.
Basically, you have a massive core here, team. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the signature of the front of a Z is in the shape of the headlights, right? And this is what we really want to try and retain that. But I know that, Tim, you had mentioned that you wanted a clear lens so that you could see and use this as a functioning car. Yeah. And so we had this interesting conversation. And this is another moment in the build where, and this is probably where I think this works really well, is that you're very innovative as a builder. You're very open-minded. You're looking towards the future, and we are as well. We want to see the future, so we're building it. But we can do it in a way where we can do it quickly and a little less painful. Yeah. And then you could see it. Even in 2D, we can go, oh, this actually works. But then we would have conversations and talk about it and go, can we be bold enough to remove that as a design element? Does the car still hold up without it? And we realized quickly that, yeah, of course it does, because the silhouette's still working. And because we've added, I don't remember, how much wider is it now, Carlos, from the stock? It's quite a bit wider now, right?
Yeah, because
14 feet.
To my flares, which my flares are 3 inches wider on the front and like 4 in the back, and it's wider than that for sure.
Yeah, it's
That's
like 6 inches on each side, I think.
Yeah.
So there was a huge pool. If we were to line the fenders back into the light line of where the stock light was in the bezel, it would have been this weird, super fast transition. So we felt we would add a nice curvature here, and in doing so, that also, I think what Carlos was talking about, is it introduced a whole nother design form on this car, which is a pinch line that runs the fenders, and then that pinch line, see how it dissolves into the form of the front. And then this pinch line, how it dissolves as well. They cross at each other and they make a Z. I don't know if you see that, but like it makes a Z. So you can see lots of little moments and stuff that happens throughout the car. And this is one of those really cool design forms that kind of, I mean, this is like our joint baby, so we can talk so proudly about it as we go
you guys
through.
did a hell of a job, because every time I see it, it's like, you get those little goosebumps, like, damn, that look good. I get those.
This is the goal. Awesome. Yeah. But yeah, the headlights, and thankfully, again, with Tim being so bold with understanding that this would be unique, so we decided that there would be functionality to it, that it would be an LED row of LEDs that were high beam and being able to really function as lights, but would be tucked away. So because technology makes things often smaller and more efficient and more effective, and so taking that old halogen light that's from the old car and then replacing it with this cover that then is LED, it's not just doing it for like, oh, it's a cool factor. Like that's not the goal. The goal is actually for form factor, and then letting it kind of work, because we had talked about keeping, you remember this, how we were like, we'd have a clear clear bezel that would kind of, or the shield that would shroud it over. Everything is black, and then all you see is the lines of lights as well, which is also a cool feature and a potentiality. But I think we realized quickly that this is ultimately the way to go with,
Yeah.
because of the width of the car now. I think it's like over 6 inches on both sides, right?
Yep.
So it's a foot wider. So
Yeah, and the congruence of the two body lines wouldn't be available if we were using one of the stock, clear bezels. So running that way, it just added such a nice, that corner of that car. The front, I was like the most hesitant about when we first started. Like, oh, the back is really dialed in. It looks really cool, but I'm not sure what we're gonna do about the front. Now the front is my favorite part of the car. I really like the back. The back looks amazing, but the front is just so cool. And I was really pushing for no covered headlights. I was like, I want to keep it traditional. And you guys kept like, yeah, just listen to what I'm saying. Trust me. Like, I'm like, okay. And slowly you got me there. And I was like, okay, yeah, you're right. My hands are up.
The masters of coming out your comfort zone.
Yeah, these fucking guys.
Yeah, we really do love that you're willing to take that risk with us, because it is a lot. It's asking a lot of you as the builder to do all these extra things, building all these extra things. But yeah, it's I agree. Usually I'm a rear 3/4 guy, but this car's front is in my opinion is just fantastic. So it's like it's just as present as the rear, which says it's balanced, in my mind. And I think that's what I get when I look at a lot of Aston Martin cars or Porsches. I go, the front looks amazing and the rear looks amazing, and together they look amazing. And when you're at the rear of a car and you're wanting to walk to the front, and then you're at the front of the car and you want to look at the rear, that's how you know you've balanced the car well, And we get that. I get like that when I was in there looking around it. I was like, oh, this is cool. And then I'm like, let me go. And I found myself for hours doing that. And
Just
I was like, okay,
spinning
I think just going back and forth. Yeah. And like, oh, okay. Like, this is really, and Carlos and I would get really excited.
So I think this also another approach where we do quite often. We go really light in terms of modeling. So we are back and forth sharing the same file, messing around with proportion. So we are able to see in 3D how the design body work really simple, but we are able to see what is the actual feeling of the car. And going back and forth, there we go. I think it was you, Ash, right, Ash? Or you were kind of mastering what it could be the body. We both were back and forth really quickly, figured out, which is quite cool process because it's really flexible and it's quick, and we able to visualize, as you mentioned, like we can able to walk around and feel it. Pretty much is the best approach to go. I mean, otherwise you can go really far and quick and further in terms of detail, but you are losing the flexibility on the process of what it could be if we go wider or maybe less, or bending of the rules.
It works well because you guys are like a half a day apart,
Yeah,
time wise. So like you guys are also
8
working
hours.
really fast. Like the amount of design work you guys did in such a short amount of time is absolutely ridiculous. But yeah, exactly. So Ash can work on it for hours and then pass it off. And while Ash is sleeping, Carlos is tinkering with it, and like you're going back and forth. But
Yes.
it's
Sounds
awesome.
like a cheat code.
Yeah, true.
Cheat code to life. Have somebody that lives halfway across the world.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's a hindrance and sometimes it's amazing. And that's a perfect example, because as you design something, there's only so much time where your eyes and mind are fresh to the design, and your mind gets fatigued. It's like if you ever smelt something bad and you eventually get used to the smell, it's the same thing. Your brain goes, okay, we've already dealt with this, now let's continue, and don't get stimulated by it because we have other things to focus on. And the same thing with design, you lose perspective. And this is one thing that we would pass the thing back and forth, and laying out the splines and the form lines is really key. This is what you're seeing here. Everything in yellow is what we call the splines. So getting these lines out first and then passing them to Carlos, and then Carlos looking at them and his reaction and him playing with them, and then us passing it back and forth, and then we know what it's going to look like and how it's going to flow over the stock car. I mean, you can kind of see the difference here between these two images. Yeah, I mean, we've accentuated every line of this car to the furthest point that still felt in harmony to one another. So yeah, it's really tricky to do it. It seems like it might be a little easier, but yeah.
No, it does not seem that
I
way.
said, it looks crazy seeing from stock to now.
Yeah.
Like you just see it in the 3D world.
That would be really wonderful at the end of the build, is to have, I'm sure somebody with a nice clean stock one and just putting it up and next to one another. So
Yeah, we got one.
just
Is that a real
to
question
really
for this
see.
guy?
Yeah, I'm sure you have at least 10 of them. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, and it's just it's been really fantastic. So that was the lights. We should talk about the door now, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and we should also hit the quarter, like the little, the upper shadow line that we were talking about that kind of scoops up from the back.
Yeah,
That's a
yeah.
nice
There's so
design
many
feature.
fun details. Carlos, you want to talk about the door?
Yeah, but it's interesting because I remember when we did a sketch, I have to be honest, to me, it was always like a sort of the weakest point of the door, how we can solve that. Because a sketch, it bring a quick solution to visualize how the car would look, but it's not really accurate. So it's still kind of an interpretation how the door it would look like. And both we were, at least for me, from my point of view, I was like, I need to go in this in 3D how it's gonna end. And to me now is one of the best feature from my point of view the car has. It's kind of subtle, but I'm pretty sure even in reality it's gonna be even more visible, this kind of feature where that kind of crease get under the car and it gets so much wider in that regard. And I love that. And so I think it's really hard to visualize in a sketch when at every single point it looks different or disappear and kind of weird and odd, but in 3-dimensional it looks fantastic.
Well, I think as we talked about too in the beginning, the 240Z, the rear wheel sits so close to the door line that if you try to push it out by 6 inches on each side, you get this massive transition that it would be really quite abrupt. And you see it in a lot of wide bodies, right? And that's why over fenders work so well, because they're isolated in a local zone of expansion, basically, and it kind of fits because it's a part of it. But this is something I think that I know that Tim was uncomfortable in the build, but I was like, Tim, can we please redo the door too? He was like, no, it's too much stuff. I was like, I'm sorry. I know I don't have to do the work, so I'm willing to take the risk for you. So I'm willing to make you have lots of sleepless nights just so it looks great. So and bless his heart, he finally agreed, which is fantastic, because I know originally that was just like the lights. I think that you were kind of wary of us extending this out. And because that's a lot of work to reskin a door and inseam and all these kind of things. Like that's the door jamb itself. There's a lot of things that have to go in there, and it's a moving piece as well. So, and it's a piece that not only moves, but it slams into another piece. So it's like there's so many things that could go wrong with it on an engineering side of things. So, so the door we knew instantly that because we're extending it out so far, that we needed to really basically redo the door so that the line itself became very natural and smooth. And then half the door would be cut so that we would have more negative space again. And you can kind of see this is one of the original drawings, this 2D drawings that Carlos and I did. But yeah, so then it became this nice transition. And I think this is where we got really inspired by, obviously, Porsche, the old 964s and the turbos and all that kind of stuff, where we're taking this stock clean line that the 240 has and then extending it out, which makes it like this is what it feels like now. It's quite flat and clean. So how can we add all of those details into that? And that was kind of that was the door in a nutshell. And that was something that I think the last thing that I will touch on that I think was really kind of a fun process is, I think this is one of what we do sometimes is Carlos and I will take a render, we'll take the 3D file and we'll take a render, then we'll draw over it. And I think Carlos was heading to bed and I was like, oh, I'm going to wake him up with like awesome ideas, and so we were just passing the file back and forth, and this was before we had the details on the side skirt area, and it was just trying to clean up the idea for this. But when I was at this angle, I thought, what if there was a shadow pool in here? Like there was a little bit of a dimple in this area. And I think that was the final, you probably can't see it here, and this is a bad sketch, but what if the light a line of the door so accentuated that shut line, that belt line of the car, and then had a shadow build right here. And so and when Carlos was building out the rest of the model, he included it, and you can see it. It's very subtle here, but it's like all of those little details. So fun. So, and they all add up, and you don't realize that lots of cars have these little subtle details. Modern cars, old cars. Once you see them, you can't unsee them. They're quite cool. So yeah, there it is. Yeah, it's like a muscle line.
Yeah.
Definition line.
And that's a good transition to like where you see like your initial drawings, like when we got to even like the final stage of the drawings, and then when you're actually rendering it like in 3D, it can change so much. Yeah, going from that drawing to what it actually looks like in 3D, it looks like not a completely different car, but it looks so much more refined in the 3D model because you have all those little tiny, when you're modeling it, you're thinking of every single thing while you're like hitting the door and you're like, oh, cool, well, let's add something here, see what it looks like. That's where it's like, yeah, something where I have to physically shape something to be like, I got this idea and I think it'll look cool. And then I could spend a week shaping it and then go like, oh, it looks like ass. Never mind. Like,
Scratch it.
But yeah, rapid prototyping has been key. I think what we're trying to do is we're trying to make an ecosystem here where we're trying to show what the future potentially would look like amongst friends and colleagues of how to make things for the future, which is utilizing all this new technology and new processes and stuff and doing it very quickly for the sake of something great. And it does all come down to taste and decision making, which is also something that you literally learn by being a human being and observing the world. And that doesn't come from anything other than that, in my opinion. So, but yeah, rear 3/4 time.
yeah.
Awesome. Well, since the doors widen out, so we realized that the rear 3/4 panel, what we wanted to do, and I think Carlos and I talked about it at great length as well, is we wanted to continue this sharp pinch line. See how it's sharp here and then it rounds off in the front fender. We wanted to do that same thing to the rear. It started at the door, and then because it runs longer, then have it dissipate back here. But we also wanted to have this really beautiful pool that would happen here. So, and this is going to be so epic in real life. Like when you get to see this,
You're looking at it
fender,
from behind. Yeah. Oh my God.
it's yeah. And this is something that this all came back. I think, Carlos, if you remember when we were doing the splines, we were laying it out. And I think I remember seeing this and going like, yeah, this is going to be amazing, because you can see how this pulls in. And we knew that you were going to seam up the line to the stock body like right around here. So we just tried to find this really beautiful flow. And that was obviously one of the big modifications, knowing where it would connect to the stock body panel right here. And then obviously continuing the vents, but going back here, which is really tricky. Carlos did a fantastic job of modeling and putting this all in there, because this is a very complicated stuff, getting this all cut in there. So you want to talk about that?
I don't want to bore you guys about all the challenges about modeling. But you can guess it was a pain in the ass. And something like you guys, I'm really a 3/4 guy, and I take it really seriously. What is the shape of that car? So we were back and forth, and then the final refinement. It took me quite a lot to figure out how I can solve all that, blending shape here and there, disappear and appear again. Please don't show the the wireframe.
Okay. Yeah.
No worry,
It looks good.
You can show. I'm not ashamed about my job. It's fine. Get all the critics.
It looks great.
At the end of the day, just solving problems. I know I'm not the specialized poly model guy, but yeah, basically. There you go. It's not too bad.
Yeah, it's not too bad. Yeah, when you go in to do these, it's such a complicated thing to create lines that are smooth and still work with subdivisions and stuff too. So yeah, it's never easy. It's a difficult process.
The modeling there, I see all squares, no triangles.
That's it.
Well, because we're not using CAD base, and CAD is extremely clean. Well, if you know how to use it properly, and it's designed that way for clean, perfect surfaces. So we're kind of jumping between. I think Carlos and I would both love to get into CAD at some point, But yeah, and this is also, we should talk about too, the division that happened too. Not in the best of ways is that it's usually best to have one person focus on one of these intense things, and modeling is a very intense kind of painful process. It's like origami that's dimensionalized, and so you're constantly working on it. So, Carlos did a fantastic job, and really took this to the extreme, and yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
the results are here. And the cool thing is we're using all this data that you modeled, and we're using it to then be translated for the printer, which is also pretty fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anything else you want to talk about the rear 3/4?
I think it's pretty good.
I think the daylight, maybe.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Tail lights. I know that Tim had mentioned that he wanted the tail lights to be an important element of the car.
Yeah.
And I think you had mentioned it like pretty early on, is the tail lights, and having the tail light be an extension of the design. And I think we realized pretty quickly in the process that we had this really cool design element of this cut in the front fender, because you had also mentioned that you wanted to have a camera here, so we found a spot that we could cut this out and then hide the camera behind this cut.
Yeah.
So we continued it back here, but then we realized, oh, this is great. Now we can put the rear light there, and the rear light has a place where it can basically delete itself. And so yeah, this was because originally I think we were like going to run it along the whole thing, and this because we didn't have this solved. So
Yeah.
and I think all in all, I think we did the whole process. We did the whole design and everything in what, 2-3 weeks?
It felt like 2 weeks, I think. Yeah. That's crazy.
Yeah, we're moving fast. Yeah, that's another thing why it makes it so good to be able to do design amongst two designers, and is because we're able to share the workload and stuff. But yeah, and I think the rear light is something that is another design feature. I know that you were really heavily inspired by the MHC Brawler build. So
Yeah. I saw the Brawler, and that really gave me the idea of I wanted to put the radiators in the back, because Ravi from CSF has been nice enough to like let us put this car in his booth. So I really wanted to put the radiators like front and center, and that just made it. Yeah, and seeing the back of that car and just seeing the mesh there and that light, I was just like, this is gorgeous. I want something similar to this. We can cut out this whole taillight panel. I want to throw those radiators in there horizontally. So it'll work with, then that just also worked with like the idea of all the negative space and the pass-throughs that we have, the holes in the car. And yeah, it's come out so well. It looks terrific. Yeah, and with all the shrouding and the radiators and stuff like that, you'll still be able to see through the vents to the tires through the back, but it'll be blocked off, so it'll still be a usable vehicle, so I can still have a trunk, keep stuff in it.
what are you gonna put in there? A Slurpee? Yeah. Yeah, that's gonna be the world's smallest trunk. It's gonna be awesome though.
Yeah.
But,
I fit one duffel bag.
Yeah,
A little
exactly.
baby duffel bag.
A weekend bag, that's all you need.
Yeah, this is a camping car. Yeah. So yeah, Carlos's Ferrari, the Brawler, is his MHC's first build. So yeah, and this one is such an inspiration. Still one of my favorites personally, and I know Carlos has.
It's so good.
We try to put a lot of what we do with MHC in this build as well. Hopefully, it's felt as well as like
I think so.
all the things. So
For sure.
yeah, like there's a signature to it. It's subtle, but it's there. It's like OEM plus triple plus. But yeah, and then everything else kind of naturally flows. And I know that Tim had mentioned that he really loved. I think it's the ASM S2000 rear duckbill that kind of comes out. Was it the ASM?
The Voltec Circuit
Okay, yeah,
3
that-
or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a great reference. We knew that we wanted to extend it out quite far, but we wanted to find I know that Carlos and I were really inspired by, obviously we're always inspired by Porsche, and we love this kind of duckbill that's on, I don't even know what build that is. I think it's a custom build.
Yeah.
But yeah, we love that. And so we were thinking about, how to pull this in. This is all like random references of things that we admire and love of other designers. There's, you're always humbled. You should always be humbled by all the incredible designs and work of others. And so we constantly surround ourselves and saturate ourselves with all that stuff. So when we're going in here to try and find decisions and solutions, and again, we have that pool of light that sits down in here, and it's really quite a simple form, but it's got its own elegance and stuff to it as well. And
Yeah, absolutely.
kind of fits the rest of the body. But I know that if you keep a car really clean, you don't want to add all these extra things that kind of come off and protrude off the silhouette. So that was obviously not the design intention. And then that also inspired the rear diffuser and the way that all flows and stuff too. So yeah, and everything kind of came together from there. I think the diffuser was probably the easiest thing that we did. We're like, yeah, it goes like this, and yeah, it's done. Yeah. Yeah. Which is probably like the thing that most people spend a lot of time on too.
Yeah.
Getting rid of all that dirty air. So, but yeah, it all came along. Carlos, anything else you want to say about the rear or the spoiler?
I think I agree. The diffuser was easy.
Yeah,
it was easy.
Well, and also when we build in 3D, everything is mirrored, so we only do half the car, so you don't have to do the other side. So everything is mirrored using symmetry. So it's literally just two pieces.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's crazy.
which is nice. Yeah, because you want to work smart, not hard. So like when we were laying out the splines and stuff and clearance and things too. So we ended up pulling it down quite a bit and then flaring out the rear. I think we got inspired by the Bolide on some of the design forms. This is just an absolute beautiful car. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Crazy.
yeah. We try to find little things in here that we could use as inspiration and take little bits of everything.
Yeah.
So it doesn't feel like one car was ripped off by all of them.
Yeah.
We ripped off all the cars. Yeah.
But that's art, so
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, art is a remix, so
Yeah.
nothing's really original. It's all just remixing things. Yeah.
Cool.
And there it is.
There she is. There's the baby. Now we just
Yeah.
need to make it. We have 5
Yeah.
months. Go.
the race has officially
You have
begun.
3 days to bake it.
Yeah.
But on video, it'll look fast. So.
That's true. It will look fast.
Yeah, for reals, Carlos and I said many times, Tim's gonna hate us. Tim's gonna kill us. Tim's gonna hate us. Tim's gonna kill us. And then he just sits there on our calls smiling, but I could see the pain in his eyes.
Oh, I got the
See,
perfect meme for that. The little frog that's always.
Yeah, that laugh. But yeah, it's quite a process. So we don't envy you on this journey, but we're here to support.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's all at the same time. We talked about this being a flagship car for you and the shop and everybody involved. It's like this is really going to be an evolution of everything else, and
Yeah.
This car will be a statement that will then set the precedent for all the rest of them and set you away from everything else.
Yeah.
Because this car has been wide-bodied and everything by everybody in the business. So I think this is, in my humble opinion, is going to be the best-looking Z
I agree.
outside.
I agree.
Yeah. Potentially.
Potentially, if we can pull it off. We'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens.
You got this.
Well, cool.
Awesome.
How do we want to wrap this up?
It's been a pleasure.
It's been a pleasure.
having you guys design this
Yeah.
car. Because,
Yeah, and hopefully we can get Carlos to come to America for the first time.
Yes.
let alone
Sit in
Vegas.
this thing in Vegas.
It's gonna be amazing.
Man,
Yeah, come to
Yeah,
America
man.
for your very first time and go to the
I just-
absolute craziest place in America.
Yeah, I'm really hoping that he can, because he's not been in a Raptor, so I'll take him on a Raptor. He's not been to Las Vegas, so I'll take him to Las Vegas. And hopefully this is the goal, to bring Carlos over from Europe, bring him here, and then we take a road trip, go see you guys, meet you guys for the first time in person. That's also something we've never done. We've not met each other in person, so that would be fun. And being able to see the car, whatever state it's in, being able to see the car and be proud of all the work and time and effort that we've all put in here. So,
guys, for real, it's just something like I cannot be more hyped I'm so excited to think about it. And we talk about this much. We talk about like I don't want to hype too much for different reasons. Like just it's still a long shot yet, but it's still it's still there. Like it's possible that it happened eventually, and yeah, pumped.
Fairy tale. Yeah, awesome. Well, it's been a pleasure for us as well, guys, and we really do appreciate you giving us so much latitude, freedom in the design process, and trusting in the process, and giving us the freedom to do so. Because I think Carla, you got the best of Carlos and I in a very condensed amount of time. So.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's a very true statement. Condensed.
Yeah. That's the whole process of this entire build is going to be condensed. But yeah, but we got this. We're going to take it from here. And thank you guys so much for what you've done so far, and what we're going to continue to do. Hopefully we can work on something else in the future.
Yeah.
Yes, this is the goal.
Amazing.
Cool.